afternoon, folks. Or should I say, good morning, my neighbors. The reason I say that is, like most young Africans back home, we're still trying to figure out what adult life means for us. I'm Evelyn Lewis from Sierra Leone, and I've been in the US now for 29 years. Going back and forth, we have a strong footprint on the continent in terms of our business, and then we also have our footprint here and in India. But I started out working with one of the few Africans back in India since 1999 in terms of having my presence and then having a full office there back in 2006 on one of our companies, SBTS Group, which I'm going to talk about as the parent company. But one of the key things that I've been trying to solve, I guess, after getting involved a lot with things in Sierra Leone and Africa, et cetera, is youth and employment. And it's a much talked about subject and something that I'm very passionate about. And my wife and I have done quite a lot of work with it. Just to give you a brief background of what SBTS Group is, it's actually called Sierra Business Technology Services. Funnily, I used to do a lot of work for US Customs, Homeland Security, providing subcontract work to another partner. And then we used to call ourselves Small Business Technology Services. And then we hit some large amounts, and then my partner told me, it's like, we're not small anymore, change that name. So we started doing a little bit more. But we started off just right out of college. I went to George Mason University here. And the day we graduated, my wife and I, just went that following day to Arlington County to register, and that was $67 worth of registration for that business. With at least with our current valuation, that's about $8 million to date in terms of putting all of these businesses together. But just looking at how that start itself was for us, it's just like so many other folks out there trying to actually start their businesses and wondering whether you should start, whether you have enough money. For me, it was just purely guts. I got purely into sales at an early age when I needed to figure out how to make money. When my mom had just left from Sierra Leone to come to the US, I was 12 years then, and my mom back then was a teacher at the international school, which was, you live one of those pretty lives, middle class, and then she left. And the person who she left us with is like, these kids are spoiled. You need to be going to the market to sell. You need to be doing this. I wasn't the type of kid you needed to tell to take my book. But it created a sort of much as it was an interesting experience, it was a very unusual thing for me, and it was very tough, because at that age, first of all, I'm missing my mom. I'm used to being spoon-fed. But not long after that, I started trying to learn certain survival skill sets that I think sometimes are very almost impossible to beat out of me when my wife and I are going at it in terms of, you're too stubborn to do this kind of stuff. So I have this perseverance to try to make things work, no matter how tight I find myself in a position. And back then, I would just take things like cardboards and make a building out of it, and basically out of that, go sell it to the banks. I can make something like this exactly from scratch. I wasn't taught by anyone. But then I realized that I could actually get transportation from this. I could get lunch. I could get so many other stuff from it. And it was just fun. And it just continued. So when I came to the US in '89, at 17, my mom was like, what do you want to do? I had doctor, lawyer, all the other usual topics on top of that. And then one day I just passed in front of Radio Shack, and I saw something that was like talking stuff. I'm like, what is this? They said it's a computer. I mean, imagine, I'm just from Africa at that point in time, right? Trying to figure all this stuff out. And I'm like, I want this thing. I want to learn more about this. And my mom is like, okay, if that's what you want. Then she found a used computer for me, $750 back then. My sister chipped in, I chipped in, whatever I was getting from working. And there started my computer career. So for me, it was a hobby that I've actually grown with since I came to the US. So you can see for as long as I've been in it, it's very hard for me to do something else without thinking first and going out in this route. And that has led me to some very excellent opportunities in terms of financial, travel. I've been to 32 countries, traveling, just doing all kinds of work. I mean, if you call me and say, let's go, I can go with you. Of course, not now. I mean, like, I need to actually spend more time with the family. But I'm just talking about what we've done as a company on SBTS Group. We've done a lot of work, and I can't actually say that on here. But the important pieces that we've done is, if you're in Sierra Leone right now and you're receiving pension, and your pension is no longer being stolen from before. That's because of a very dedicated effort that we made to actually implement that software system, because imagine where a widow goes to collect their pension and they were being told, you don't have pension to collect. So I had that very difficult job of fighting against those people who were stealing close to $2 million on stolen money to stop stealing their monies. We still have quite a lot of work to do there, but that was quite a lot of money that was spent on the software. That was over $4.5 million. If you're in Ghana, you're spending about $100 million to do that right now. But that's the work that we've built a very strong specialty in and expanded our software horizon. We've done over 200 websites and things like that over the years, celebrities and whatnot. But my most proud moment besides money was in building the Ebola call center in Sierra Leone, which became the national emergency number. You can imagine it's the middle of Ebola. Everybody who has a blue passport, which I did, was trying to hop on a plane to come to the US. And I insisted on staying and telling my staff, like, listen, we've just lost $1.2 million of canceled orders through London mining. We've just lost a couple of other small orders that are coming through. And through that, we devised something that actually solved a major problem in Sierra Leone, and that was the Ebola 117 software system. So what we did then is that we actually came up with the complete concept of case management from the time we had the first case recordation till up to the time that patients were taken over to the facilities and the calls were responded to, because you can't imagine the very initial calls that were started out, I actually was answering calls myself, and when you hear some of those cases, it's like a little child calls in, my parent is dead. What happened? They were pooing on themselves. They were doing something else. You already know that we're dealing with something close to, because we have certain criteria that we had to figure. But they had no way to manage this. There were papers all over. There were papers all over. And what we needed to do back then was to just make sure, like, okay, let's follow what's the process that they follow. We realized the Ministry of Health didn't have such a clear process in actually dealing with some of these. And we walked them through, worked with DFID and a couple of other providers that were there with us to actually start getting a system in place to at least record these cases and then basically enter them into a computer and then started. So it's like you see in the airport system, you will see that, the cases that are coming up, what needed to be addressed in terms of priority, were getting addressed accordingly. That was until, I think, $9 million came in from, not to us, through the Paul Allen Foundation to take care of things. And then they call us like, listen, you've done a good job. You spent your money, but we need to give it to eHealth so that they can actually do the work. So eHealth, of course, copied our work back then, and they got the money from the Paul Allen Foundation. The reason I'm pointing that out is that these are some of the challenges that the youths that we want to help back home face, whereby the talents that you want to nurture in them, whether through innovation, entrepreneurship, and all the other stuff, gets lost because it gets assumed by someone. And by no standard in Sierra Leone are we a small company. We're the largest IT company in terms of software services, indigenous IT companies. So just off of that one experience, we've actually gone to a point whereby the company itself looked at developing certain products and services that we've been working around. The company itself was just, as I said, just outside of college when we graduated. And then basically, some of these are just fun things that I wrote up here. At least our company was ranked at least top 15 Sierra Leone, in top 15 West Africa, but me being one of the most influential people in IT, until our good friend David Senge came. David Senge, for some of you guys who probably don't know about him, is been out of Harvard, MIT environment, and he's been a lot of excellent work there. So as I said before, we are part of the top 50 IT firms. But what we are also proud of that I'll talk about briefly are the two parent companies that we have, the two other companies that we have that are sub-companies. So Training Soul and Colmania, where we offer a series of services that I'll get into in a little bit. Okay, so for the companies that we have, SBTS Group is the parent company, and then Training Soul, and then you also have Colmania. So Training Soul is our training company whereby we offer both IT training services, and then we offer soft skill services. Now, we've been around for us, you see, close to about 20 years, so that allows us to have at least some other branches. And Training Soul was a spin-off from the SBTS group of companies. And then also in the training soul aspect of it, when Ebola struck, we needed to train 336 call center agents. They've never done this before. There was no model. And we had to do this in a matter of 72 hours. Fortunately, we have a facility that's probably about this big, and every room was occupied providing the services, because what they realized is that instead of using relatives that were just coming in there not knowing anything, we had to go back and look at who can actually read and write, speak multiple languages and stuff like that. And Training Soul was the company that actually coordinated that. Who stepped up to do the job? It was, again, the youths, which I'll get to in a little bit. And then we have our new baby, which we call Callmania. The reason why the call is with a K is because we couldn't get the C for the domain. And so somehow we're going to be creative and actually use K for Callmania. And that's actually our biggest pride right now, because off of that, we built a self-finance 106-seat call center, back office center in Sierra Leone, just like you would see in India or Philippines and stuff like that. Because what we looked out of that is to say, listen, there's about $500 billion of outsourcing going on globally. A lot of that is missing the African palms. You have a huge problem in unemployment, and why not go to some of these training that will take 3 months, 6 months to actually get some of these guys onto actually providing services. And you'll be pleased to know that we have several of our young folks who are providing services for companies here in the US. If you spoke to me earlier, I'd probably give you one of these big flyers for our new promotion that's actually starting on Monday, and all of that work will be done in Sierra Leone, because that is what we're now using as the real answer to youth unemployment in Africa. I'll get to the crux of that in a bit, but let me just introduce our last company, which is Ambassador's Lodge. It's a hotel investment that we made. And then we have one more partner investment in another company we call Results Associates. They do performance management, helping governments to actually track performance. And then the last bit is called Village Link. So we go to remote villages where nobody is expecting information technology to be, and we actually build out, internet centers there and the rest. I'm not going to go too in-depth into Training Soul, but what I would like to do is, as you've seen, we offer a series of courses, over 300 courses, both e-learning and instructor-led classes. So the way these things feed is that they feed, the people go to train, and from the training, we do job placements for them at our tech company. Okay? So if I were to go over what I want to actually just summarize in certain brief steps is, we have a major challenge in terms of the challenge itself, solving Africa's youth unemployment through diaspora collaboration for outsourcing to Africa. And then we also look at youth employment statistics across Africa, and then we look at the root causes, et cetera, and then we look at the resulting effects and solutions. So these will just help to summarize. The reason I want to be brief about it is that we already know what the problem is. We already know what the problem is in terms of, like, over 70% of our youth in Africa are unemployed. And even in the countries that basically claim that these folks, we have a high employment rate of youth, are basically masking these employment ratios because they're taking some odd jobs and basically put it that they're again fully employed. Now, if you look at some of the statistics that, we can look at in terms of youth unemployment in Africa, is over 40% of the people you see in rebel groups, rebels, 40% of them are youths. So what does that tell you? It tells you that for most of the problem we're facing on the continent, it has to do with youth unemployment. And what is that cause of that? And if you look at that, it's illiteracy, it's the lack of funds for education, sustainable education system, that is. That means just paying to go to school is not enough. You need actually to pay transportation. You need food to actually get there. You need health to get there. So that's why I call it the ecosystem. The lack of apprenticeships or mentorships, the lack of meaningful employment, limited youth-inspired pro-job regulations, infrastructure, and then the lack of capital resulting in corruption. So the resulting effects, of course, wars, crime, corruption, civil strife, abject poverty, drug use, teen pregnancy, etc. And we know definitely that the solution that we're talking about now is education is the first bit of that. So as you can see, we're already playing in that space of education. And then secondly, we believe that outsourcing is actually the way to go, at least from our vantage point. Of course, there are so many other ways to look at it. But we seriously believe that if you can take Philippines alone, that's about $26 billion a year of outsourcing revenue that comes into the Philippines every year, just off of 600,000 employed folks. Look at the numbers that are out there in Africa. We can actually do the work. A lot of what we're talking about here is not rocket science. It takes me 3 to 6 months to actually have a proper call center agent, back office agent, doing digital marketing for you, website development, level 1, level 2 support, on tech support, to actually train some of these folks. All some of them are looking for is just the ability to pay, which means that for a lot of people that end up coming to our class, I have to go sign this form that my staff will yell at me. Mr. Lewis, this is the business, they have to pay. And I have to say, no, collect it on their salary when you do a job placement for them, okay? So what we're looking for is to establish a collaborative, establish a collaborative network of diaspora-led partnerships that we believe would actually leverage the jobs that are actually out there. You have a flyer going out there now that we've talked about before. And for the most part, what we believe is that that website that you'll be doing, for example, that job will be done by somebody in Sierra Leone. So all we're asking for on platforms like this is to actually network. And I want to thank the organizers for a fantastic job that they've done in terms of putting this small network. It looks small now, but we're ready to come in big next year, and we're going to actually do a gold sponsorship for this year as well, the $2,500 range and then the $2,500 range in the future. But we want to make sure that we all work as a team, and whatever we can deliver, we would gladly work with anyone here in taking opportunities from here to Africa, and those that we can do here, we'll do here with you as a team. Thank you all very much.
All right, don't go anywhere, Evelyn. Come on, just a quick question. So let's talk about IP, intellectual property, the advantage of having an American business doing business in Africa, right? The protection that provides by being here in America and employing people here, more specifically in Montgomery County, but also doing business in Africa. What protections do you have in terms of people stealing your IP?
Well, certainly, I think that's an interesting question, because we started looking at where is jurisdiction when our software bits were stolen by another American company, at least. So we figured the best way to do it is that instead of the government putting pressure on me over there, I should sue over here, since we have some sort of domiciled rights here in the US.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Come on, let's put our hands together for Evelyn.